"It's just a gathering," my dad said when I wasn't invited to my brother's engagement. I posted a luxury vacation selfie. Hours later. "Having you here listening to me means a lot. Watch until the end and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm really curious to see how far my story is reaching." I stared at my phone screen, unable to believe what I was seeing. Photos of my brother Thomas's engagement party flooded my Instagram feed. Everyone was there, my parents, our extended family, even distant cousins we barely spoke to. Everyone except me. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the images. There was Dad raising a toast, Mom hugging Thomas's fiancée Melissa, my aunts and uncles gathered around a beautifully decorated table in my parents' backyard. The same backyard where I'd played as a child, where I'd celebrated my own milestones. But this time, I wasn't invited. I called my father immediately, my heart pounding in my chest. "Dad, why didn't anyone tell me about Thomas's engagement party?" There was a brief pause before he answered, his voice frustratingly casual. "It's just an engagement dinner, Rachel. Nothing formal." "Nothing formal?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "Everyone is there. Everyone but me." "We didn't think you'd want to come," he said with the dismissive tone I'd grown all too familiar with. "You're always so busy with that online job of yours." That online job was my career in digital marketing, a career I'd built from scratch, without any help from my family's connections. A career they never bothered to understand. "I would have made time for my brother's engagement," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You should have at least given me the choice." "It's just a dinner, Rachel. Don't make this dramatic. Just a dinner." The words stung more than they should have. But then again, it was never just anything when it came to Thomas. His high school graduation had been a catered event with 50 guests. His college acceptance warranted a weekend trip to our lake house. His first job at Dad's firm was celebrated with an expensive watch that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. And now, his engagement, an event I should have been part of, was just a dinner I hadn't been important enough to include in. After hanging up, I sank onto my couch, memories flooding back. Thomas's 10th birthday party, where I was sent to my room for accidentally knocking over the cake. My high school art show that no one attended because it conflicted with Thomas's soccer match. My college graduation, where my parents showed up 2 hours late because Thomas had a minor fender bender that morning, no injuries, just a scratched bumper. It had always been this way. Thomas was the golden child, the son who followed in our father's footsteps, joining the family investment firm right after business school. I was the disappointment who chose a different path, who wanted to create rather than calculate. "Your sister always has to be different," I'd overheard my father tell a family friend once. Not independent or creative, just different, like it was a character flaw. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas, "Great party tonight. Wish you could have made it." He didn't even know I hadn't been invited. Tears slid down my cheeks as I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for years. In my family's eyes, would always be an afterthought. The daughter who didn't quite fit the mold they'd carefully crafted. The sister who was easier to exclude than include. I looked around my apartment, a space I'd created for myself, filled with artwork, books, and mementos from trips I'd taken alone. It suddenly felt emptier, colder. I opened Instagram again, my finger hovering over the photos. I should have been in those pictures. I should have been raising a glass to my brother's happiness, hugging his fiancée, celebrating with my family. Instead, I was alone, scrolling through moments I'd been deemed unworthy to share. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but definitively. Like a glass cracking under pressure, the fracture lines had been there all along, just waiting for this final push. That night, I cried myself to sleep, clutching my phone, looking at the happy faces of my family celebrating without me. They hadn't even noticed my absence. Maybe they had never really seen me at all. Little did I know that this exclusion, this just a dinner moment, would be the catalyst for a change I never saw coming. I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a hollow feeling in my chest. The bright sunlight streaming through my curtains felt like a mockery of my mood. My phone was filled with notifications, none from my family asking if I was okay, just work emails and app reminders. I ignored them all and opened my banking app instead. There it was, my savings account. I'd been carefully adding to it for 2 years, planning to use it as a down payment on a condo. Financial independence had always been my goal. Growing up watching my mother's complete dependence on my father had taught me that lesson early. But today, looking at that number, I made a different decision. 2 hours later, I had a first-class ticket to Greece and a reservation at a luxury resort in Santorini. It was impulsive, possibly irresponsible, but I didn't care. For once, I wasn't going to be practical Rachel, reliable Rachel, invisible Rachel. As I packed my suitcase, I received a text from Thomas. "Hey sis, missed you last night. Mom said you couldn't make it because of work. Anyway, here's a pic of me and Melissa. We're officially engaged." The attached photo showed my brother and his fiancée, both glowing with happiness. Behind them stood my parents, beaming with pride. The family portrait I'd never been in. I didn't respond. What could I say? Actually, no one invited me. Mom lied. Dad told me it was just a dinner. Instead, I finished packing, called a cab, and headed to the airport. No one knew I was leaving. No one would notice I was gone. 24 hours later, I was standing on the balcony of my hotel suite in Santorini, overlooking the impossibly blue Aegean Sea. The whitewashed buildings of the village cascaded down the cliff like frozen waves. It was breathtaking. I took a selfie with the stunning backdrop, careful to capture the private infinity pool behind me and the elegant furnishings of my suite. I looked good. I'd splurged on a new sundress at the airport boutique, and the Mediterranean sun had already given my skin a healthy glow. Without overthinking it, I posted the photo on Instagram with the caption, "Sometimes you need to be your own priority." #Santorini #self-care. I put my phone away and spent the day exploring the village, eating fresh seafood at a cliffside restaurant, and swimming in my private pool. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about work, my family, or how I never quite measured up. It wasn't until evening that I checked my phone again. My post had garnered more attention than anything I'd ever shared before. Friends, colleagues, and acquaintances had left comments expressing admiration and a hint of envy. But what caught my eye were 3 missed calls from Thomas and a text, "Rachel, where are you? Mom said you were working, but your assistant told me you're on vacation. What's going on? Why weren't you at my engagement?" So he'd finally realized something was wrong. I was about to reply when a second text came in. "Melissa is upset you didn't come. She thinks you don't approve of our engagement. Do you have a problem with her?" My fingers froze over the keyboard. Typical. Thomas wasn't concerned about me. He was worried about how my absence affected his fiancée. It was always about how my actions impacted others, never about me. As I was contemplating my response, a notification from my mother popped up. "Rachel, call me immediately." "What are you doing in Greece?" "We need to talk about your behavior." "My behavior?" I almost laughed. I'd been excluded from my brother's engagement party, but my behavior was the problem? Then came a message from Melissa herself. "I thought we were going to be sisters. I guess jetting off to luxury resorts is more important to you than family." Thomas is heartbroken. I hadn't even met Melissa more than twice. The audacity of her message made my blood boil. But it was the next notification that truly stunned me, a comment from her on my Instagram post. "Some people buy luxury vacations when they're struggling financially." Classic overcompensation. The implication was clear. She was suggesting I was broke and faking a lavish lifestyle. I'd never cared much about social media perception, but this public undermining from someone who barely knew me felt like a slap in the face. I switched off my phone and walked back to the balcony. The sun was setting over the Aegean, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was too beautiful for the ugliness trying to reach me from thousands of miles away. I decided then that this trip wasn't just an impulsive getaway. It was the beginning of something new, a life where I wouldn't be defined by my family's perception of me. What I didn't know was that the next day would bring an unexpected encounter that would change everything. My third day in Santorini began with a breakfast of Greek yogurt and honey on my private terrace. I decided to leave my phone off, giving myself permission to disconnect from the drama back home. The constant vibration of notifications had become too much, each one a small jab at my already bruised heart. Instead, I wandered through the narrow, winding streets of OIA, camera in hand, capturing the striking contrast of white buildings against the deep blue sea. For once, I wasn't thinking about my family's approval or disappointment. I was just present. "You have a good eye," a voice said from behind me as I photographed a particularly beautiful doorway adorned with bougainvillea. I turned to find a man watching me with interest. He was tall with olive skin and salt and pepper hair, dressed casually but in clothes that subtly spoke of quality. "Thank you," I replied, lowering my camera. "You frame things differently," he continued. "Most tourists just take the same postcard shots. You look for the details." His observation caught me off guard. No one in my family had ever noticed or commented on my photographic eye. It was just another one of my hobbies, they dismissed. "I'm Alexis," he said, extending his hand. "Local business owner and photography enthusiast." "Rachel," I responded, shaking his hand. "Tourist and digital marketer, I guess." We ended up walking together, Alexis pointing out hidden spots that most visitors missed. He owned a small chain of boutique hotels throughout the Greek islands and had a passion for showcasing authentic local experiences. As we talked, I found myself sharing insights about digital marketing strategies that could help highlight his unique properties. "You really understand this," he said as we settled at a small cafe overlooking the caldera. "My hotels are special, but I struggle to communicate that uniqueness online. Everyone looks the same on these booking websites." Before I knew it, I was sketching ideas on a napkin, outlining a content strategy that would emphasize the distinct character of each property. Alexis listened intently, asking intelligent questions that challenged me to think deeper. "You should let me hire you," he said finally, his expression serious. I laughed, assuming he was being polite. "I'm just on vacation. This is me relaxing." "If this is you relaxing, I'm impressed," he said. "I've hired 3 marketing firms in the past 2 years. None of them understood what I was trying to accomplish like you do after one conversation." There was something refreshing about being valued for my professional expertise rather than being measured against family expectations. For the first time in days, I turned my phone back on, ready to show Alexis some of my previous work. That's when I saw it, a long email from Thomas. "Rachel, we need to talk. Melissa is really upset about you missing our engagement party. She thinks you've always had a problem with her family. She told me about what happened at her sister's wedding last year, how you overheard her father talking about those questionable business dealings and made that comment. I didn't know that was why you've been so cold toward her. Mom and Dad are furious that you'd bring up something like that at a wedding. Why can't you just be happy for us?" I stared at the screen, dumbfounded. I'd never been to any wedding with Melissa's family. I'd only met her twice, briefly, at family dinners. The questionable business dealings Thomas mentioned were completely unknown to me. "Bad news?" Alexis asked, noticing my expression. "Not bad," I said slowly. "Just confusing." I scrolled through the rest of my messages and found one from my cousin Emma, the only family member I truly trusted. "Rach, things are weird here. Melissa is telling everyone you've had some vendetta against her family because you know something shady about her dad's business. Your mom is upset that you'd caused drama by bringing it up at some wedding last year. I told them I didn't remember you being at any wedding with Melissa's family, and everyone got really quiet. Something's not adding up. Call me." I felt a chill despite the warm Mediterranean air. Melissa was spreading lies about me, creating a narrative where I was the problem. And my family, the people who should know me, were believing her without question. "I'm sorry," I said to Alexis, "but I think I need to make a call." Of course, he nodded, discreetly moving to give me privacy. The call with Emma confirmed my suspicions. Melissa had fabricated an entire story about me discovering her father's questionable business practices and threatening to expose them. According to her, that was the real reason I hadn't been invited to the engagement dinner, not because they forgot me, but because they feared I would cause a scene. But why? I asked Emma. Why make up such an elaborate lie? I did some digging, Emma said. Melissa's father is being investigated by the SEC. It's not public yet, but it's happening. I think she's trying to discredit you preemptively in case you ever do find out and say something. As I hung up, Alexis returned to the table, placing a glass of wine in front of me. You look like you could use this, he said. Family trouble? How did you know? Only family can put that particular look on someone's face. He smiled sympathetically. Want to talk about it, or would you rather discuss the potential of becoming my marketing consultant? I looked at him, this stranger who had shown more interest in my talents in one afternoon than my family had in years. Then I looked at my phone, still buzzing with accusations and demands. Let's talk business, I said decisively, putting my phone away. I think we both have something valuable to offer each other. Little did I know that this conversation would become the foundation for a transformation that would shake my entire family to its core. The month I spent in Greece working with Alexis transformed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. What began as a consultation evolved into a comprehensive marketing strategy for his entire hotel chain. I threw myself into the work, using my skills to showcase the unique character of each property, creating content that captured their authentic charm rather than generic luxury. Alexis was a demanding client but a supportive one. He valued my insight, challenged my thinking, and most importantly, truly saw me, as a professional with valuable expertise. You've increased our direct bookings by 40% in 3 weeks, he told me over dinner at his family's restaurant in Athens. My board is impressed. I'm impressed. It wasn't just work. Something inside me was healing. Away from my family's expectations and dismissals, I found my confidence again. My voice grew stronger. My ideas flowed more freely. I stopped second-guessing every decision. When it was time to return home, Alexis insisted on driving me to the airport himself. This isn't goodbye, he said as we pulled up to the departures terminal. You're too valuable to let go. I want to offer you a contract, 6 months, consulting for all our properties. You can work remotely, but we'd need you here for a week each month. The offer was generous, more than generous, and would establish me as an international consultant. It was an opportunity that would change the trajectory of my career. I'll think about it, I promised, though my mind was already racing with possibilities. As the plane took off from Athens, I watched Greece disappear beneath the clouds. The woman returning home was not the same one who had fled there in hurt and anger a month before. When I landed, my phone exploded with notifications. Thomas had been trying to reach me for days. My parents had left increasingly irritated voicemails. But it was Emma's message that caught my attention. Thomas and Melissa are having issues. He found out she lied about you. Call me ASAP. I called her from the airport taxi. What happened? I asked as soon as she answered. Thomas overheard Melissa talking to her sister, Emma explained. She admitted making up that whole story about you knowing her family's secrets. Apparently, she just didn't want you at the engagement because you're not their kind of people, and she thought you'd bring down the tone of the event. I laughed, though there was no humor in it. And Thomas? He confronted her. It got ugly. He's staying at your parents' house right now. But that's not all. Emma paused. Your mom found out that Melissa's family is indeed under investigation. The SEC thing is real, and it's serious. They're worried about how it might affect your dad's firm if Thomas marries into that family. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of being the family disappointment, I was now the one who hadn't entangled herself with potential financial criminals. When I arrived home, there was a message waiting from Thomas asking if he could come over. I texted back a simple, yes. He arrived looking nothing like the confident golden boy I remembered. His eyes were red-rimmed, his normally perfect hair disheveled. "Rachel," he started, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know you weren't invited to the engagement. Mom told me you couldn't make it because of work." I swear I didn't know. I believed him. Thomas had many flaws, but deliberate cruelty wasn't one of them. He'd always been oblivious rather than malicious. "And then Melissa started saying all these things about you," he continued, pacing my living room. "That you were jealous of her, that you were trying to sabotage our relationship." I should have questioned it. I should have known that wasn't you. "But you didn't," I said quietly. He stopped pacing, meeting my eyes for the first time. "No. I didn't. And I'm sorry." His apology was sincere, but it couldn't erase years of being overlooked, years of being the afterthought in my family story. One revelation about Melissa couldn't undo that deeper pain. "What happens now?" I asked. Thomas sank onto my couch, head in his hands. "I don't know. Mom and Dad are freaking out about the SEC investigation. Dad's firm can't be associated with that kind of scandal. They want me to break off the engagement." "And what do you want?" "I thought I knew," he admitted. "But now I'm not sure I even know who Melissa really is." I watched my brother, the family favorite, the golden child, looking lost and broken on my couch. For the first time, I felt no satisfaction in his pain, no vindication. Just a quiet sadness for all the wasted years when we could have been allies instead of competitors in a game I never asked to play. "I got a job offer," I said, changing the subject. "International. Significant." Thomas looked up, surprised. "Really? That's great, Rachel." "I'm taking it," I continued. "I'll be traveling a lot. Greece mainly, but other places too." "Greece? Is that where you've been this whole time?" Everyone's been wondering where I've been, but no one bothered to check if I'd been invited to your engagement party, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. Thomas flinched. I deserved that. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our complicated family dynamics hanging between us. "Do Mom and Dad know about your job?" he finally asked. "No," I replied. "And honestly, I'm not sure they'd care. They've never taken my career seriously." "Maybe it's time they did," Thomas said, straightening up slightly. "Maybe it's time a lot of things changed." I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. A glimmer of awareness, of recognition that perhaps the family dynamic he'd benefited from all these years wasn't as perfect as he'd believed. My phone pinged with a message from Alexis, contract emailed. "Hope to hear your decision soon. The Athens team already misses you." Thomas glanced at my phone. "So, who's Alexis?" "My new client," I said, allowing myself a small smile. "And possibly a new chapter in my life." I didn't elaborate, and surprisingly, Thomas didn't push. Instead, he stood up, looking slightly more composed than when he'd arrived. "I should go. Thanks for listening." As he reached the door, he turned back. "Mom and Dad are hosting a family dinner tomorrow. They want to discuss the Melissa situation. Will you come?" In the past, I would have agreed immediately, desperate for any invitation to be included. But the woman who returned from Greece wasn't that person anymore. "I'll think about it," I said simply. After Thomas left, I opened Alexis's email and read through the contract. It was everything he'd promised and more. A new path was opening before me, one I had created for myself, not one prescribed by my family's limited vision of who I could be. The family dinner invitation loomed in my mind. For the first time, I realized I had a choice. I could go and potentially subject myself to more of the same treatment, or I could prioritize my own well-being and newfound confidence. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "We expect you at dinner tomorrow. 7 p.m. sharp. Family crisis." I looked at my mother's message, then at Alexis's contract on my screen. The decision I made next would define not just my relationship with my family, but my relationship with myself. I decided to attend the family dinner, not out of obligation, but to face my family as the person I'd become. I signed Alexis's contract before leaving my apartment, the decision giving me a sense of armor as I prepared to enter my parents' home. The familiar drive to their suburban house brought back a flood of memories, mostly of leaving family gatherings feeling diminished, invisible, or misunderstood. But tonight would be different. I wasn't coming as the family disappointment, I was coming as a woman who had just secured an international business contract, who had found her worth outside of their narrow expectations. When I arrived, the tension in the house was palpable. My mother opened the door with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're late," she said, though a glance at my watch confirmed I was exactly on time. "Hello to you too, Mom," I replied, stepping past her into the foyer. The family was gathered in the living room, my father standing by the fireplace, Thomas slumped in an armchair, my Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert sitting stiffly on the sofa. The absence of Melissa was conspicuous. "Rachel," my father acknowledged with a nod. "Glad you could join us." The formality in his tone was nothing new, but tonight it struck me differently. Had he always been this cold, or had I just never noticed it because I was too busy seeking his approval? "Where have you been?" my mother demanded as soon as I sat down. "Thomas has been going through a crisis, and you've been completely unreachable." "I've been working," I replied calmly. "In Greece." "Greece?" My father's eyebrows rose. What could you possibly be doing in Greece? There it was, the dismissal, the implication that my work couldn't possibly be significant enough to take me internationally. In the past, I would have scrambled to explain, to justify, to seek validation. Not tonight. "Running a digital marketing campaign for a luxury hotel chain," I said. "They've offered me a 6-month contract as their consulting marketing director. I'll be splitting my time between here and Athens." A beat of silence followed my announcement. "Is this some kind of joke?" my father finally asked. "Not at all," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "The contract is signed. I start officially next week." Thomas looked up, a hint of pride in his expression. "That's incredible, Rachel. Congratulations." My mother's lips thinned. "Well, that's all very interesting, but we have more important matters to discuss. The Carmichael situation." "You mean Melissa's family and the SEC investigation?" I interrupted. Another silence, heavier this time. "How did you know about that?" my father demanded. "I have my sources," I said simply, thinking of Emma. "And frankly, I'm curious why my career news isn't considered important, but Thomas's relationship drama is a family emergency. Because Thomas's choice of wife affects this family's reputation," my mother snapped. "Your internet job doesn't." I let out a soft laugh, not of humor but of recognition. "My internet job just landed me an international director position with a 6-figure contract. But you're right, it doesn't affect this family, because this family has never cared about my success." "Rachel," my father warned, "this is not the time for your sensitivity." "It's not sensitivity, Dad. It's clarity." I leaned forward. "I was excluded from Thomas's engagement party. When I confronted you, you told me it was just a dinner. But it wasn't just a dinner to Thomas, was it? It was an important milestone, a celebration, for everyone but me." My mother shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't think you'd want to come." "You didn't think about me at all," I corrected her. "And that's the problem. That's always been the problem." Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should focus on the Carmichael situation." "No," I said firmly. "I think it's time we focus on the Sinclair situation. Specifically, why one child in this family has always been valued while the other has been treated as an afterthought." "That's not true," my mother protested weakly. "It is true," Thomas said quietly, surprising everyone. "Rachel's right. We've never treated her fairly." My father's face reddened. "This is ridiculous. We've given both of you every advantage." "No, Dad," Thomas interrupted. You've given me every advantage. You've given Rachel every criticism. I never saw it before because it benefited me. But seeing how Melissa lied about Rachel, how easily everyone believed it, it made me look at things differently. I stared at my brother, a lump forming in my throat. This was the first time he had ever stood up for me. My mother's eyes were suddenly shiny with tears. I never meant to make you feel excluded, Rachel. But you did, I said softly. Both of you did. My entire life. Your sister has always been more challenging, my father said, turning to Thomas. You were easier. You followed the path we set. The path you forced on me, Thomas cut in, his voice gaining strength. Did you ever ask if I wanted to join the firm? Did you ever consider I might want something different? The room fell silent as my father stared at Thomas in shock. This was unprecedented, both children challenging the family dynamic in one night. What are you saying? My father finally asked. I'm saying I'm not sure I want to marry Melissa, and I'm not sure I want to stay at the firm, Thomas replied, a new resolve in his voice. Seeing Rachel create her own path, seeing her succeed on her terms, it's made me question everything. My mother let out a small gasp. This is your influence, she accused, turning to me. You've always been the rebellious one, and now you're turning Thomas against us too. I shook my head, feeling strangely calm in the storm of emotions. No, Mom. This isn't about rebellion. It's about authenticity. It's about being seen for who we really are, not who you want us to be. And who are you, Rachel? My father asked, his tone somewhere between challenging and curious. I took a deep breath, looking around at the family that had shaped me, for better and worse, and finally spoke my truth. I'm a successful marketing director who's built a career without your connections or approval. I'm a woman who's learned her worth doesn't depend on your validation. And I'm your daughter, whether you choose to really see me or not. 3 months after that fateful family dinner, I sat on the terrace of Alexis's flagship hotel in Santorini, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My laptop was open but forgotten as I took in the breathtaking view. Is this seat taken? A familiar voice asked. I looked up to find Thomas standing there, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. The perpetually starched collars and polished appearance had given way to casual linen and a genuine smile. What are you doing here? I asked, surprised but pleased. My sister is a big-shot marketing director in Greece. I thought I'd come see what all the fuss is about. He sat down across from me. Plus, I needed a vacation. In the months since our confrontation with our parents, so much had changed. Thomas had broken off his engagement to Melissa, a decision vindicated when the SEC investigation into her family's business became public, revealing financial improprieties far worse than anyone had suspected. How long are you staying? I asked. 2 weeks, he replied. I've taken a leave of absence from the firm. I raised an eyebrow. Dad must have loved that. Thomas laughed, a real laugh, not the polite chuckle he'd perfected for business dinners. Actually, it was his idea. You're kidding. After you left for Greece, things were different at home, Thomas explained, his expression turning thoughtful. It's like your absence finally made them see what they'd been doing. Dad started asking me if I was happy at the firm, really asking. When I admitted I wasn't, he suggested I take some time to figure out what I actually want. I was speechless. My father, the man who had mapped out our lives according to his expectations, encouraging self-discovery? And Mom? I finally asked. She's trying, Thomas said with a small shrug. She called me yesterday to make sure I'd found you okay. She asked me to tell you she misses you. I took a sip of my wine, letting that sink in. And what about you? Are you figuring out what you want? Thomas gazed out at the horizon. I'm starting to. I've been thinking about environmental law, actually. Using my legal background for something more meaningful than corporate contracts. That's unexpected, I said, genuinely surprised. Good unexpected, I hope. Great unexpected, I assured him. We fell into comfortable silence, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the sea. It struck me how rare this was, being with my brother without the weight of competition or expectation. "How about you?" Thomas asked eventually. "Are you happy here?" I considered the question. These past months had been challenging but fulfilling. My marketing strategies had transformed Alexis's business, and I discovered a creativity and confidence I never knew I possessed. "I am," I replied honestly. "For the first time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "And Alexis?" Thomas gave me a knowing look. Emma mentioned there might be something there beyond business. I felt my cheeks warm. My relationship with Alexis had evolved gradually from professional to personal, but we were taking things slowly, both aware of the complexities of mixing business with pleasure. "We're exploring possibilities," I admitted. "But my career comes first right now." Thomas nodded approvingly. "Good for you, Ratch." The nickname, one he hadn't used since we were children, brought a lump to my throat. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, his expression serious. "For all of it. For not seeing what was happening, for benefiting from it, for not standing up for you sooner." "It wasn't entirely your fault," I said. "We were both shaped by the dynamic they created." "Still," he insisted, "I should have been a better brother." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're being one now. That's what matters." The next morning, I woke to a notification on my phone, an email from my mother. My finger hovered over it, hesitant. Finally, I opened it. "Rachel. I've started and deleted this email a dozen times. Words have never been my strong suit, actions were always easier. But I realize now that my actions toward you were shaped by my own insecurities. I was always afraid of not measuring up, afraid of what others thought. I channeled that fear into controlling you and Thomas, into creating a perfect family image. In the process, I lost sight of what really matters, seeing and accepting my children for who they truly are. I'm proud of you, Rachel. I should have told you that years ago. I'm proud of your independence, your resilience, your courage to forge your own path. I hope someday you might consider coming home for a visit, not as the daughter I tried to shape, but as the remarkable woman you've become. With love and regret, Mom." Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was sincere, and coming from my mother, who had never admitted fault in her life, it was monumental. Later that day, I took Thomas on a tour of Alexis's properties, showing him the marketing campaigns I'd developed, the unique story I'd crafted for each location. He listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions, genuinely interested in my work. "You know," he said as we walked along the beach after our tour, "I always thought you were rebelling just to rebel. I never understood that you were following your passion." To be fair, I didn't fully understand it either until recently, I admitted. I knew what I didn't want, to follow Dad's blueprint, but I was still figuring out what I did want. "And now?" I smiled, looking out at the endless blue horizon. "Now I know. I want to create, to build something meaningful, to be valued for my mind rather than my compliance." "Well," Thomas said, bumping my shoulder with his, "consider me officially impressed, little sister." That evening, we had dinner with Alexis at his family's taverna. Watching my brother and Alexis talk animatedly about sustainable business practices, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. In losing what I thought I needed, my family's approval, I had found what I truly needed: self-respect, authentic connections, and work that fulfilled me. The painful exclusion from Thomas's engagement party, that moment when my father dismissed me with, "It's just a dinner," had been the catalyst for my transformation. Sometimes the greatest gift is being left out, because it forces you to find where you truly belong. A week later, after Thomas returned home, I received another email, this time from my father. It was brief, characteristically direct, but with a warmth I'd rarely seen from him. "Rachel. Thomas showed me your marketing portfolio. Impressive work. There's a clarity and vision there that reminds me of your grandmother. She was the real business mind in the family, though few gave her credit for it. I'd been reflecting on my role in your journey. I pushed Thomas toward the path I wanted, and I pushed you away from the family for choosing differently. I was wrong on both counts. When you're ready, there's a place for you at the family table, not because you've earned it, though you have, but because it was always yours by right. Dad. I sat on my balcony, looking out at the Aegean Sea, and felt the last pieces of old pain begin to dissolve. The daughter who had been excluded, overlooked, and dismissed was gone. In her place stood a woman who had discovered her own value, a value that existed independently of family approval or validation. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to my father, "Thank you. I'll be home for Christmas." Then I added, "Save me a seat at the table." As I pressed send, I smiled, knowing that when I returned home, it wouldn't be as the family disappointment seeking approval, but as a woman confident in her worth, offering her family the chance to truly know her at last. The circle was complete, not perfect, but healing. And in the end, that was enough.